Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim, and we talk about horror movies on this show. And one of the things we're doing this year, and we're getting very close to the end of this, might I add, we have been working our way through a couple of the franchises because there's new films in those franchises coming out in October. And again, we're quite close to that. We're now mid-late September. So, one of the franchises, of course, has been the Chucky franchise, because we've got a new one coming out. We've got Cult of Chucky coming out next month. So this is going to be the sixth, and at least for now, final Chucky movie. Now, admittedly, it's only a month, so it's not that long until we have to do the next one. But this is the final movie that's already existing in this franchise that we're having to do. So
it feels good to tick the little box off. Like, all right, one down.
It does.
Two to go.
It's funny, the other two franchises we're doing, which is Texas Chainsaw and Saw, both of those have 7 movies already, so they've got another one each to go before we can tick them off. But so we'll start spoiler free as we typically do, and then we'll warn you somewhere in the middle before we go into spoilers. So Curse of Chucky. This is the problem. This is the problem when they have similar names and they don't just name them numbers. Because honestly, Child's Play 6 would have worked for me.
Oh yeah, sure.
I like a nice simple number. It's fine.
Yeah. And I feel like not enough movies do that nowadays. Everything seems to be, it's a lost art of the numbering system.
Yeah, even the Insidious movie that's coming out, Insidious 4, which is coming out early next year, that's not got a number anymore. Because, 2 and 3 were chapters 2 and 3, whereas this one's just Insidious, the Lost Key, or the Last Key, or whatever it's called.
Yeah. So I think I would have liked to... I don't understand why you couldn't have just done, if you did Insidious 4, the Lost Keys or whatever, that would have been fine. But
well, do you know what it is, Tim? It's because maybe trick's not the right word, but they don't want people to see a number and think, oh, I have to have seen the previous ones. They almost want people to see just Insidious, the Last Key, and think, I can just go see that because it's not got a number on it, and it's standalone, or it's which it's a can of worms, because on the one hand, okay, maybe it is, but maybe it isn't, and maybe you're actually putting people in the cinema that don't actually won't be able to follow it in the same way because they haven't seen. Maybe it is relevant that the previous films existed, but what do I know?
I mean, even the only one I feel like 2 was the only one that really hinged a lot on the first one, but I think it can still be enjoyed. But I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of stuff on when it comes to comic books with this stuff where people don't really give people the benefit of a doubt. I feel like companies are so afraid of people not being able to jump in, which maybe some people are, but there's nothing wrong with watching the fifth of a movie without seeing the other ones. And I don't know, people need to stop worrying about that stuff, I guess.
Now, admittedly, I'm someone who wouldn't watch the 5th movie without watching the first 4, because I'm just that kind of guy. But
I think it depends on the kind of thing. Obviously, something like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars types movies, those are ongoing kind of sagas that you need to know that kind of stuff. But if you're watching Friday the 13th, you know who Jason is, what the deal is. I don't think it's that big a deal. I mean, yeah, if you're a big fan of that kind of stuff, you want to start from the beginning, but I don't know. I think people shouldn't be too cautious.
I do miss numbers, though. I miss getting to Friday the 13th Part 8. Come on, give me I want an 8 in a title. God damn it. I mean, even Star Wars kind of shied away from it. They don't use episode numbers anymore. I mean, everyone still uses those. I mean, everyone calls it episode 7, 8, and 9, but they're not actually in the title. They're gone. So
yeah, I miss those.
What a weird tangent to start off on, but so Curse of Chucky. This is notable for a couple of reasons. First of all, this was the first one in the longest amount of time since the last film. The previous one was 2003, Seed of Chucky. This was 2013, so this was a good 10-year gap. Maybe it was 2004, 9 or 10 years. So long gap. It was on hiatus for a while. I've forgotten this, but I remember how we said how the last one was directed by the writer, Don Mancini, who had written all the movies since the first one. He's actually directing this one as well, which I think is very interesting, given that it has a very different tone and style to the previous film.
Yeah, and I also wonder if that's... I can't really think of many other franchises where the creator has been so involved.
Yeah, I mean, obviously sometimes they'll come back. We've got a new Halloween movie coming out next year
Yeah.
where John Carpenter's kind of back involved, but he was missing for a good number of a lot of those movies, in between. So yeah, it's interesting, and
Also,
yeah,
I was surprised that this was you said 2013.
yeah,
I feel like I don't know. I thought like, oh, I for some reason it felt closer to me. Like I was like, oh yeah, I thought like I just saw this like a year or two ago or something. But I saw it when it right came out.
yeah, it's been
like,
4 years, surprisingly. But yeah, so this was kind of like the return to horror, like because like Bride of Chucky made it more of a black comedy, and then Seed of Chucky was basically just way off in the deep end. It wasn't a horror movie anymore at all. This was kind of the attempt to bring it back into a sort of horror movie. This was direct to video / VOD. It may have had a limited release, and the only reason why I say that is because there was both an R-rated cut and an unrated cut, and I don't know why there'd be an R-rated cut if it was never released anywhere but home video, unless like I don't know, like Walmart refused to carry the unrated version, so they had to have an R-rated cut just for that. But
yeah,
I don't know. The reason why I'm picking them, by the way, is because they've had a history of doing that.
oh yeah.
I'm not just picking
they're
them
awful.
randomly. Yeah.
Well, you should pick on them. They're a horrible company.
Fair enough. Yeah, the worst. But so this was kind of, and I think what's funny about this is you start this movie off and you're introduced to these characters who we don't know. We have Nika, who's our main character. She's in a wheelchair, and right away I'm thinking, okay, right, I get what you're doing here. You're giving us someone who's even more vulnerable than usual, so that. I mean, as much as Chucky usually does okay against regular people, the idea of him against someone who's disabled, like they're even more vulnerable, and therefore it feels a little bit more even in a weird way, or even less so. He's got the advantage in this case. Yeah. So so they're doing that. We're in this kind of big creepy house, and it's like, okay, where are we going with this? And when we see the doll, we see Chucky himself. He looks kind of like he did in the first movies. He doesn't have the scars and all that. The patched up sort of stitch work. And all the rest of it, he looks kind of old school, and so, and it does kind of play the horror things where, for a long time, the movie doesn't show you him doing anything. Like it's all off camera, and the characters are like, wait, was he there? Has he moved? What's happened? And like it's all off camera. It plays with the build to actually revealing, and obviously it's kind of a weird, not weird, but I get the temptation not to do that with this character now, because this is the sixth movie, and the last couple of movies especially, it was like, no, he was on screen all the time, cracking his jokes, doing his thing. Can you bring back the suspense of like, because it's not so much that is he or isn't he alive, because we know he's alive, it's a Chucky movie.
Yeah.
But can you have the suspense with the characters not knowing, and can that make it entertaining? And I think to a point it does work, because knowing something's there that the characters don't, but we're seeing it from the character's perspective, and that they don't see that he's doing something. It's just you see the odd little thing here or there that maybe hints at it. I think that puts you in their headspace. So in that sense, I think it works.
Yeah.
I mean, needless to say, I think this is better than Seed of Chucky, and I've not asked Tim the question. So Tim, did you enjoy Curse of Chucky?
I do, but. I was thinking about when
Reservations are coming. Reservations.
Well, I remembered when I first saw it, like when it came out, and I remembered liking it a lot more. And this is only my second time seeing it, and watching it now. Maybe it's because we're going through the whole series or something, but I'm noticing a lot more flaws than I remembered.
Yeah, I think that's
I think it's still good, but and I really, really applaud them for. I think successfully coming back from, what was essentially turned into a jokey, franchise, by Seed. Not that it was bad, but, at that point we kind of thought like, oh, okay, now we've gone into the jokey, cheesy kind of stage of this franchise. And I think they actually did a good job of bringing it back to, no, like this is a legit horror movie now. But yeah, I couldn't help but noticing some stuff that they did with like, the story that I'm like, I don't know if I really like that much.
Yeah, well, obviously we'll talk about that when we get to spoilers. I do, yeah, I appreciate that they brought it back. It kind of reminds me of like like Freddy's Dead to Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now, obviously, that was more of a meta thing, but it took it from Freddy had got really jokey. Let's make him kind of scary again. And the funny thing with Chucky's a much more fine line. And to be fair, Freddy Krueger kind of is to a point as well, where even when they're being scary, they're supposed to be cracking some jokes. And you can sort of see why they fell down the rabbit hole a little bit of, no, let's just make this about jokes and make it about the humour. Because it's almost a really obvious path to go, and I wouldn't say easy, but a relatively surefire way of succeeding. Yeah, and the story, and it kind of worked to a point, but Seed of course went a bit too far for us, and I think most people, I don't think Seed is universally that liked. I don't think it's hated, but it's kind of like we spoke about it last time. It was kind of. It's kind of like got some ideas.
Yeah, you watch it and you're like, okay, I get it. All right, fine. But then it's not something where you're like, oh, I'm so glad they did that. Let's see more of that.
Yeah, so ultimately the direction is not necessarily where we wanted the franchise to go, I don't think. And then this is kind of a weird movie for the first sort of chunk of it, because not this time obviously because I've seen it before, but the first time I was watching it, I remember the first half of the movie when it is just like, okay, the doll's arrived at this house, just someone sent it here, someone's posted it to this address, and we don't know who, we don't know why. The doll looks like it's fresh and brand new, and genuinely for the first chunk of the movie, the first time I watched it, I wasn't sure if it was going to be in continuity with the previous films. I thought, is this just a reboot? Is this like a fresh start? Is this going to connect at all? And of course it actually is part of the continuity, and it goes down into some of those ideas later on, but for a good while I'm like, is this even part of the rest of the movies? Is what's going on? Funnily enough, the actress who plays Nika, our main character, is Fiona Dourif, who I'm assuming it's the daughter of Brad Dourif, who voices Chucky. And the funny thing is that every so often I could really see the resemblance. I could just see his face and her. It was kind of weird. It was like, because part of me, I think the first time was also thinking, oh, it's going to turn out that she's like his daughter, like before he became a doll. Like that's going to be the twist, and that's not where it goes. I'm not spoiling anything when I say that, but I thought they might try and pull that just because she actually kind of looks like him, and it was kind of almost weirding me out a little bit at times.
I didn't really notice that. Maybe because I didn't even realize it was her until like afterwards. And like looking at the credits, I was like, oh hey. And also I kind of tend to forget what Brad Dourif looks like just because you don't see him for most of the movie. Like
honestly, I don't think I'd remember what it looks like if I hadn't recently rewatched Alien Resurrection, because he's in that. And he's quite over the top in that. He's very expressive with his face. So I think that's why I was sort of noticing her face a little bit more in this, because I was getting that. As for the characters, so Nika, like her mother, she lives with her mother. Her mother dies. Clearly it's Chucky, but they think it's a suicide. So her sister's husband, their little girl, and then their nanny all come to stay for the funeral. The rest of the movie, actually, after the opening, all takes place in one day, one night. It's just one long night that the whole movie takes place in, which I think is kind of cool. I like that kind of setup. And admittedly, I think it's like kind of a budget thing, because this is clearly a lower budget movie, and it's like, oh no, the whole thing's set in one house over one night. It's just a cheaper thing to do, but it can be effective. As much as there is maybe one or two points where I noticed the budget being a bit of a problem, but for the most part, I think it went unnoticeable because they were wise with how they set up the story. Like, this is where it is. It's all taking place here. So yeah, they're all over like trying to like help and comfort, but it's kind of dysfunctional. Her sister wants to sell the house and she doesn't because it's her home. Her sister's having money troubles. Her and her husband seem to be having marital troubles. So all this is kind of going on, and then of course the little girl likes the Chucky doll, which is lying around now because it arrived in the mail, and that's kind of the setup for the most part, and it just it plays out through the night, and there's some character drama going on, but once Chucky gets going, it's all about Chucky. It's all about what he's there for and what he's up to. So yeah, I think the kills are pretty fun. I will say I enjoyed quite a few of the kills. Simple and effective. There's well, I can't spoil anything yet, so I'll just say they're fun.
Yeah, they're okay. I don't think they don't really stand out a ton. I feel like
they're not the best the franchise has had. There's one in particular, and I'll say the attic, that I kind of liked. I like that one, but
I think honestly, I feel like this movie seems a lot more impressive just because, like, the last movie was Seed. I feel like this would be a lot more of a, oh, just another, like, okay, but maybe like forgettable, sequel if it wasn't like, oh, it's coming back and being rooted in horror again. And I just kind of feel like that plays a lot
Yeah, no,
on it.
I think that's fair. I definitely think it's better than Seed, and I think it's better
Yeah.
than 3 as well. I would rank
Yes,
it
I
above those
agree
two.
with those.
And I think it's solid enough. Like I like this is one if I'm rewatching the franchise, I won't. I mean, I wouldn't skip any of them because they are actually pretty serialized. But like,
Yeah.
if you were going to skip one, Seed would be the one you'd skip. I don't think you'd skip this one. I think it's fine. Like
Yeah,
I think
sure.
it's entertaining. It's in quick. It's only 90 odd minutes, and
Yeah.
it has some good moments. It never dragged for me. I don't think.
No, it goes by pretty quick.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I think we'll get into spoilers then, so we don't have to keep dancing around things. So full spoilers from this point on for Curse of Chucky. So it's funny actually because this one actually in a weird way had the most continuity relevant stuff in the whole series. Because when Nika is like starting to suspect things and she looks up the murders and the doll and finds out about Charles Lee Ray, she like as she's scrolling past like the results on Google, you can actually clearly see the military academy that Andy went to. Like that's one of the options. As is Chicago, Niagara Falls is one of them, which is where they went and raided Chucky. Like so, it's actually referencing like most of the franchise and just in that computer screen alone. And then we'll get to the post credit scene later, but and how where the ending goes. But it was just that simple stuff like that. I'm like, okay, it is in the continuity. And then, of course, when the sister upstairs in the attic like notices that his face is peeling off a little bit, and she starts to rip away, and it's like someone's put makeup over the stitching, and it's like, oh, this is like after those movies, like we are in this timeline. This is cool, right?
And I would say I feel like this doesn't happen very often in horror movies, especially like franchises like this. But I was genuinely shocked when I first watched this, because like you said, there is a weird air about it where you're not sure if it's a reboot or, I think I kind of assumed they were doing, one of those things where it's like, all right, this takes place after Child's Play 3, but we're going to ignore, Bride and Seed and stuff. But yeah, at that moment, you're like, oh shit, they're going for it. Like they're, keeping this stuff in. And I actually think that's pretty cool. And, really impressive again that they are able to go back to these horror roots and they do it without rebooting or ignoring stuff from the past. You okay?
Just keep going.
I'll keep that in. Yeah. And if when we talked about the last movie and how towards the end there's that speech that we like where Chucky kind of goes on this rant about, I kind of like being a doll now. I just want to kill people. I don't really care about switching my body anymore.
Yeah,
I like that this movie.
Yeah, he says, I'm infamous. Like, I'm Chucky the killer doll. I love being this. I'm a legend. Let's just keep doing this.
So I like that the movie starts off with, it's like, oh, I guess he's still following that because he's like, following up with, just murdering these people, which you find out later there's a connection. But that's one of the problems I have with the story is that it seems like they're going for that at first, and then towards the end it seems like it starts getting back into the, okay, he's trying to find a body again.
Well, to a point, like, there's one scene that bothers me, because when you find out the backstory, and which, by the way, when she's on the computer and she's looking up stuff and you see his photo, I'm like, he looks dead different. Why have they used a photo from him present day? Because use a photo from him when they made the first movie so that it looks like he did when they get shot. But of course, the reason for it is that they're going to have flashbacks later on, and he's going to just be playing himself, even though it's been 25 years, as he points out, and he just looks much older. But whatever. So you find out that he was like sort of harassing, in a weird sort of like demented love way, like her mother, while she was pregnant with her, and presumably killed her father. Like you imagine that's what happened, and her mother turned him in, and it's the cops showing up there that led to the chase at the start of the first Child's Play. That's kind of like, and they're like, okay, fine, whatever. And he stabbed her when she was pregnant, which is what paralyzed her legs. Okay, whatever. Fine. Because at that point, I'm like, okay, they're still adhering to this idea that he's not trying to get back in a body. He's just, this is just a vendetta. Like, he's just pissed because she turned him in. Like, he's pissed at her and pissed at this family and he wants to kill them all. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, that's cool, that's a motive, but that isn't just, I want a body. And then they kind of ruined it with that one last scene when he shows up at the girl's house, the little girl. And
this is a weird movie where I feel like it has like 2 or 3 extra endings that it didn't need. Like, it has a very clear, motive, from the start of the movie, which, like you said, basically has this vendetta against these people, and that's kind of where it should end. But then, we get like a couple of endings where it's like, okay, we didn't need this. Like, they might be fun, like post-credit scenes or anything, but it feels a little tacked on.
Well, let's run through them. So we end the story, and he basically pretends that Nika went crazy and killed everyone, and because obviously no one's going to believe her that the doll did it, and she's left holding the knife, and like everyone, she looks like she's guilty, and I liked a lot of the stuff where him chasing her and she's crawling into she's got like a little elevator
that was cool.
There was some good suspense stuff with that. And I liked him like going for her and like slipping in the blood, and there was just some fun chase stuff. So the first time we actually got outside the house, outside of the flashback, is at court when she's been sentenced to the hospital for the criminally insane because she's
unless you count there's like a few driving scenes.
Oh,
like,
sure, you're right. Yeah, there's a couple of scenes with like the priest's in an accident because Chucky poisoned him, and then the cop who's coming towards the house. You're right. There's a couple of scenes like that, but
which I actually say I thought that was really well done, because you see him like poison one person's food, but then you don't really know whose exactly it is, and then you kind of see around the dinner table like each person will do a little something that you're like, oh wait, was it them? Oh wait,
yeah, because the little girl says it tastes funny, and you're like, oh, is it the little girl? Is she gonna die? But then it becomes clear as it goes on, the priest is the one who the one who's poisoned. And I like the effect as well because his head's like trapped in a big bit of metal, and he's still alive, and they pull out the bit of metal, and his head just rolls off. Like that's actually what kills him, is them taking the bit of metal out. But so we're at the courthouse, and she's actually, to be fair to the jury and the judge, she is acting kind of crazy because she leans into the door like, I'm still alive, you little son of a bitch. Like she's acting a little bit out there. But we find out, much like the start of Bride of Chucky, like that's one of the cops who's working there, the cop we've seen throughout the movie, takes the doll, and he's got he's established that he phones someone and says, oh, he's got the doll, this better be worth the money. And then Jennifer Tilly like sneaks up behind him in the car, like Bride of Chucky, and kills him. And we know that Jennifer Tilly, who's actually Jennifer Tilly, but it's actually Tiffany inside Jennifer Tilly's body. Just not to get confusing or anything. But she collects Chucky, and she's like, okay, we're next. And she goes and the funny thing is I almost think, okay, you could have ended it here with she's killed the cop and she's got Chucky back. That's who sent Chucky to the house. She's still like helping him by sending him wherever he needs to go. Right. But then she takes him to the post office and sends him off somewhere else. And then number 2 is coming.
I just want to talk about this scene real quick. Like, that postal worker, if they didn't flag that like box as suspicious, like everything like Jennifer Tilly did was like, oh, is this like fragile? Like, oh, I don't know, maybe like wink, like everything was like a joke. It was like, all right, calm down. You can be a little conspicuous.
Yeah, it sounded really just suspicious in the sense that this could be an explosive in here. Like, but that, it just sounded so serious. Just put down other. Like, just the way she said that. So the box arrives at the little girl whose entire family is dead or in the criminally, hospital for the criminal insane. She is now living with her grandmother. And she comes in, and Chucky's there, and he's like, oh, the grandmother's down in the basement. He's probably killed her, because why not?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, we're going to play a game called Hide the Soul. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, I thought you were over this, Chucky. But here's the thing, we have a post-credit scene after this where he's clearly still in the doll, so I don't know what this achieved.
It's weird.
Yeah. And did he, like, the whole series as well, he's never tried to go into a female, because he doesn't, presumably because he wants to be a guy again, because that's what he is.
Yeah.
So I thought that was also strange. Like, this. I mean, he does try to justify it by saying, "Oh, you're someone who would never be suspected," which is maybe why he wants to. But at the same time, it's like, so this serial killer who loves to do rituals and shit, you're going to be inside the body of like a 6-7 year old girl. Like, I don't know. I just whatever. So he starts in the chant, and we get the bullshit sinister ending where the camera pans over through the kitchen, and then presumably the grandmother, jumps up into frame, big loud noise, jump scare, and she's like, she's got a bag over her head, she's breathing really heavily, she's suffocating.
It's like, are we to believe that before that she was just laying like peacefully, calmly, and then all of a sudden she's like, I should probably like, stand up real quick.
Yeah, because the girl did look in the kitchen, she sort of went in and looked around, and then she turned around and saw Chucky. So yeah, that is a bit, that's cheating, basically, is what it is. It's cheating. So you've got that.
One thing though, I will say, because spoiler alert, later we're gonna see that. Actually, pretty soon we're gonna see Chucky's still inside. Chucky.
Yeah.
So maybe the one thing I'll give it is maybe the grandma sitting up like interrupted the ritual or something. Maybe he did that, and then the girl was like, "Oh no, what the heck's going on? I gotta call the police or something."
Yeah, I can see that.
It's still awful and it should not be there. Yeah,
it's a stupid bullshit. Throw something at the camera ending, which I hate. It's just pointless. It's cheap. It's lazy.
And it's never really been like a thing with the series. I don't think the series has ever been big on jump scares, really.
Nah, I don't think so.
Like, really. I mean, maybe like every now and again, but not like this kind of bullshit, like out of nowhere dumb jump scare.
Nah, if anything, maybe it'll be like Chucky jumping out at someone, but it'll have that extra comic effect as he's like jumping and screaming because he's a little doll, and it's like, that just seems cheap.
It's never felt cheap before.
Yeah. So the post-credit scene, which is only on the unrated version of the movie.
So a spoiler warning: if anyone watched this on Netflix right now, it's streaming, which is how I watched it. They actually don't include this, which was really annoying. But
which also means some of the death scenes have been neutered, because the rated cut also just cuts out some of the gore, takes away some of the blood.
Luckily, I watched the unrated cut the first time, so I at least still remember this scene.
Yeah. I actually checked what the differences were, because I put it in the Blu-ray and it told me to pick, and I'm like, oh, I don't know which one's the proper, like, which one should I be watching? And I looked up what the differences were, and it was very minimal. It was just each of the deaths has a bit more gore. I'm like, okay, cool, I want that. And the post-credit scene is not in the R-rated cut. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm definitely watching the unrated cut then. Yeah. So that's post-credit scene. Chucky arrives at a house, and we get this sort of mirrored scene where, again, it's like the FedEx. Oh, it's not actually FedEx, it's like a fake company because it's a movie. But it's like this FedEx guy, he's like, oh, blah, 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 you got a present. And this guy who we don't know is like, oh, must have an admirer or something. And he takes the box up, and the phone rings, and he goes and answers that. And as he's answering the phone, like, you see the knife come. And I actually quite like this little moment with the knife coming outside from the inside of the box and cutting down the tape from the inside. Yeah. That was a pretty cool little visual. And I get, the first time I saw it, I guessed who this was. There's only one person this could really be, especially since this movie went out of its way to remind us that it existed. Because the name was mentioned a couple of times throughout, because Nika brought it up, and the camera sure enough pans around and you see photos of little Andy with his mum. So you get this is Andy grown up. This is him, and he's like 30, 35, whatever age he is now, and you actually see the photo of his sister from the second movie as well, which I thought was pretty cool. So the idea that he's actually stayed close with her, and you also see his apparently he graduated military school because he's got a certificate for graduating. So you see that, you see the sister from the second movie, you see his mum. So it's almost like here's the first three movies. We're actually calling back to all three of them right now. And then Chucky's getting up, he's got his knife, and then you hear the click, and there's a shotgun in his face, and Andy's waiting for him. He knew, like, he's prepared. He knows how Chucky works. He's a veteran at this. And he's like, wait, Andy, buddy, old pal, bang. Cut to black. So it's a fun little scene, but
yeah, like I would have maybe cut the second Jennifer Tilly scene and the
little girl scene. Yeah, I would have done that too.
And then just leave this as like a fun little mid post credit scene. I think that would have been fun.
Yeah. Also, I will say though, I do think the actor who plays Andy here, because same actor, who's grown up, I believe. I do think his acting as an adult is not like, we don't need him to be the main character in another Chucky movie, because he's not like, he has like 3 lines here, and they're all kind of stilted and forced.
It was a fun little nod to the fans, but I don't know if like I don't need to see the next movie, him being some leading some Chucky resistance group or something like.
What, him, Katherine Heigl, and then Nika from this teaming up? We're all going to take on Chucky. Yeah.
Actually, that does sound kind of cool, but maybe recast him. I don't know. Unless he watches this review, in which I feel bad. So hopefully.
Oh. It's funny you actually we suggested that, or we talked about that there, because I remember there being like a fan idea for Friday the 13th where all the surviving final girls would team up for a movie. Ooh. And try and track down Jason. So all the ones that still survive, like, so the girl from 2, the girl from 3.
That sounds pretty cool.
Like, and maybe Tommy Jarvis as well. So all the final girls plus Tommy Jarvis. I don't know if it was going to be called Final Girls. I mean, they'd have to change that now because we've had movies called that. But fun movie, might I add. I like that movie. But it's a fun idea. But
I like that idea. It's interesting to see, like, someone actually take the fight to them instead of just kind of being, very stationary and just kind of waiting for him to do his thing. That's cool.
So let's talk about some of the more of the middle of the movie, because we kind of jumped straight to all the endings. I blame you for that. But so I want to talk a lot about. So I'd completely forgotten a lot of this movie. I'd forgotten that they sort of hint early on that the husband might have a thing for the young attractive nanny, right? And he keeps flirting with her. He keeps saying, "Oh, we've got that in common," and he keeps chatting her up, and the wife's noticing, and she's like giving him the eye, and she's looking at, but then the twist is that she's the one having the affair with the nanny, and they have a make-out scene, and I'm like, okay, fair enough, I didn't see that coming. Fair play to you, movie.
But I thought I thought that was an interesting little twist, and then I liked that with the husband being suspicious and him implanting the camera on Chucky. I thought that led to a cool scene. I did think
when he first brings up that he's suspicious, I thought that came out of nowhere, because up until that point in the movie he was just flirting with the nanny. It was kind of weird. I mean, it kind of works in retrospect, because it's like he's trying to like annoy his wife because he knows she has feelings for her, so he's like, I'm going to flirt with her. There's going to be this double. Like, we think it's annoying her because she's annoyed that her husband's flirting with some girl, but in actual fact she's annoyed that the girl she's with is flirting with her husband. But whatever. But he eventually gets suspicious of Nika as well, and he ends up like trying to run from her, and then he gets killed by Chucky, of course. But I want to talk about that because you brought up the camera. He put a camera in Chucky. He brought a nanny cam so he could spy and like catch her in the act, so that in court he could like take the kid and everything else in the divorce. And that's a big point of contention for them. But basically, Nika almost dies in the car because Chucky like tries to asphyxiate her to death, and he actually saves her. But when she wakes up, she's like tied, like her hands are tied to the chair. She can't move. And he's like, I can prove who this was. I put a camera in the doll, and he puts it in. And I've got a couple of comments to make on this footage that he watched. Now, I think it's great that there's footage like POV of Chucky running around doing his thing. Yeah. I do have to comment though. Why does he not? Like, he never comments in this. He's like, we see the POV moving around, and then it gets to the his wife and the nanny, and he's like, oh, they're kissing, and then it keeps moving again, and it does something else, and I'm like, okay, there's a certain point here where you have to acknowledge that this isn't like just your daughter holding the doll. Right. This looks like someone walking around, and he never acknowledges it.
Yeah, he stays way too like transfixed on like, all right, let's see where this is going, and it's like there's literally something walking up, like very obviously not being carried, but walking like behind you right now. That's the other point I wanted to bring up. So at one point it cuts to the live feed, and it says at the bottom of the screen on the laptop, live feed. That stuck out to me like a sore thumb, because it looked like a subtitle. It didn't look like it was like a part of an interface or part of like an on-screen display. It looked like part of a subtitle that you would just have in a movie. And it just looked so cheap. Like someone had just put it in post. Yeah. They didn't think about it, they just put it in, and it looks nothing like you would see on like a video camera feed or anything like that. I didn't really notice it, but I'm sure if I go back now and watch it, it
stuck out so much to me. It was just so cheap and like, no, that's not what that would look like. So, that's the whole thing. So I want to talk about that, because that really drove me nuts, that scene. As much as I like seeing the footage of Chucky running around POV, it really drove me nuts. The him not reacting to it, and then the live feed thing.
It was a cool idea for a scene, but probably could have been handled better.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing. So yeah, the little girl ends up just being like sort of hiding in the cupboard the whole movie after
Yeah,
Chucky
she
just
kind of
hides her away.
disappears for a good chunk of it.
Yeah, that was a little bit strange. But otherwise, I enjoyed the carnage. I enjoyed Chucky running around chasing people, especially once he became a bit more active. Once the face paint or the face makeup came off, and it was like, oh no, it's really him. It's not just like a reboot Chucky. It's really Chucky.
Yeah.
And
I think the first reveal when he's like under the covers with the little girl, and then I think there's like a lightning storm out, and she's like, oh, I'm scared, and I think we finally get him going like, you should be. That was a pretty cool scene.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I will say we've complimented the doll animatronics a lot throughout this series, and I think for the most part it's still pretty good, but there was a couple of moments in this one where it felt a little bit subpar. I thought the doll early on looked a bit weird, but then they kind of explained that away with it being, it's made up, it's like makeup over the messed up one. I'm okay, that kind of works. There was a couple of moments though. There's a shot where it's just after the eyeballs went down the stairs. Yeah. And it looks really obviously like CG, like enhanced, and it looks not quite right.
What it looked like to me was, I'm not sure if this is what they did, but it looked like maybe they got
a kid,
or something, and dress them up, and because it's weird, he has like a very specific movement, which is like a doll, but then every now and again you see like, oh, it looks like they're moving like a person. It's a lot more fluid.
And the funny thing is that they did that same trick later on in the movie, and I thought it looked much better. It's on the main stairs. There was a top-down shot, a bird's eye view, and you just see the top of his head as he's walking down the stairs. And I thought that one looked really good. I'm like, oh, that one was quite impressive. You should have done that the whole time. But they wanted the shot looking up at the stairs as he's walking down, and it looked a bit off. So, but hey, maybe that's where the budget came in a little bit. They couldn't do it the way they used to do it in the last couple of movies. They had to make some sort of compromise, and it didn't work out as best as it could have. But
yeah, I mean, I think if you look at it as a I get, we've talked about this before, like it's a little unfair now to say that VOD or what we kind of used to know as like straight to video is a little bit of a bad word, but it's a lot better than it used to be. But it definitely does feel like there is a little bit of a straight to video vibe on this. Like you can tell, like the budget probably isn't as much, but honestly, at the same time though, it's very impressive for this type of movie.
So this is the thing though, is I think movies like this and other serial killer movies that we are big fans of in the 80s and stuff, I don't think they need to suffer though. I feel like you can do a proper Friday the 13th on a direct-to-video budget. Like there's no reason why that needs any more than that. And I think that's where the audience isn't as big as it used to be, but I think that's why they can thrive in these conditions. It's like, okay, right, so we'll do, because I mean they've made a new Chucky movie, so they must have been happy enough with how this one performed for them. Universal I'm talking about here. So I can't imagine like this, for its investment and what it got back, it must have done well, and I don't think it needs to be any more than this, any bigger than this. Sure, in this case the animatronics could have been a little bit better, but I will say this, it never had that cheap direct-to-video look to it, which is something that really sticks out to me with a lot of direct-to-video horror movies. There's that sort of weird tint that it's got. It's just, but they drain the color out a little bit, and it just looks kind of shitty.
I would say there was one scene that I kind of felt like that, which is when she's kind of flying off the like out of her chair and like falling down to the ground towards the end. And there was a weird way with maybe that might be more of how it was shot or something that felt like a little cheap to me, but other than that, that's the only thing that kind of stuck out to me as being like, this looks a little off or something. Well,
I don't think that's because what I'm talking about is the way the shooting visual style is. That to me sounds more like they have to shoot it this way because they could only afford to do the effect this way.
Yeah.
So I think that's more of maybe it's a budget issue, but it's more of a practical budget issue. Whereas the look that a lot of VOD or straight to video movies have that I hate is more of a choice. Typically, they could choose to have it look different, and they don't. They always seem to go for, not all of them obviously, but a lot of them seem to go for this visual style that I hate, and it just looks cheap to me. I don't know why they do it. I think part of it is they want to try and emulate more expensive looking film by like using filters and stuff, and it just doesn't look right. It looks cheap because you're trying to fake it, and it looks bad. But this doesn't have that. This looks, visually it looks fine. Like it looks like it looks like any. I think if this was made for theaters, it would still look this way. Maybe it'd have more locations and stuff, but it would still look like it does. So I can't fault it too much in that sense. And the characters aren't great, but they're not bad either. They're kind of like, that's a horror movie cast of characters where they're not the worst things ever, but you do they're there to be killed, and you like them enough that you're not bored when they're on screen, but you're okay when they die. So
yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Like, none of the characters really stand out to me. Like maybe Nika, like I did like her, but everyone else just seemed like, all right, this is just a person that's gonna die. But at the same time, though, there wasn't anyone that was overly annoying that like, oh, I hate this guy or anything.
Yeah, and Nika obviously is a little bit more likable because she figures things out. We have that scene early on as well when the FedEx guy's flirting with her, and her mother kind of like, oh no, he's just being nice, honey, and it makes her feel like shit. It's like, I don't want you to be hurt, and it's like, great, she already has to deal with the fact that she's in a wheelchair her entire life. You only tell her, oh no boy will be interested in you. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you're such a great judge of character, Mrs. Charles Lee Ray over here.
you had an affair. Well, I mean, it never clarifies if she had an affair before he died or whatever. But
at the very least, she was good friends with him. Which that scene with him at the party, it's like, does no one not realize how much of a creep this guy is?
Well, by the way, at that scene at the party, it was when they revealed to him and the camera spun round and you saw him with the sunglasses. Was that the only one thinking Tommy Wiseau?
Oh no, 100%.
Yeah, come on now. I was like, see, now I want Chucky's lines to all be dubbed with Tommy Wiseau.
Oh my god. I'd be 100% down with
that. I'm scared, Chucky. Of course you should be.
I did not kill her. Okay, I did, but
oh, dear.
Just a FYI, little quick side note. I picked up The Disaster Artist. For some reason, I never read it like a couple of days ago, and I'm almost at the end. It is such a good book, and if anyone's a fan of The Room, I really, really highly recommend reading it. I kind of thought I knew like a lot of the onset stories and stuff, but there was a lot that I didn't realize.
There's a movie coming out. Why didn't you read the book?
I don't know. I guess you can see the movie, but the book's really good though. And I've heard, it might have even been you that suggested this, but I heard the audio book is really good as well.
Yeah, it is me. Because the guy who wrote it was the guy who played Mark in the movie. He actually does a really good Wiseau impression. So every time he's saying something he said, he'll do the impression, and it's really good. I heard a clip of it. The clip I heard was really good.
And at one point he mentions the title of another movie that Tommy Wiseau wanted to make, which I don't think I'm going to get the exact title correct, but it was something along the lines of King of the Vampires, The Vampire of Alcatraz, or something like that. And oh dear God, please make that movie so we can review it on this show.
Oh, I want it. I do want it. I want it bad. Oh boy. So what have we left out of the movie? We've talked about kills, talked about characters. Direction, we didn't really mention direction, which I think is maybe something worth bringing up because it is the same director as the last movie, and it's obviously the writer of the whole thing. And last time we were like, okay, it's quite simple directing wise. This time, he is trying to do a horror movie. Like he's clearly done a bit of homework. I don't know if he made any movies in between this and Seed or if he whatever, but certainly he was going for a style, and I think he mostly kind of. I mean, I don't think it's amazing direction by any means, but like, it's outside of the bullshit jump scare at the end, I think it's actually effective for what it is.
Yeah, and I like the location that they chose. It's kind of like it's a house, but it's like a big, like almost kind of a gothic house, which we haven't really seen before. We've been in the city, we've been in military school, and then kind of had like road trips and stuff. But I would say it definitely lent itself to horror very well. It's very dark. Yeah,
because it almost felt like it could have been the start of a supernatural movie. The way the house was. Also, I'm glad you went in to clarify it, but when you said we've not really seen a Gothic house before, I'm like, Tim, we've done a lot of horror movies with Gothic houses. What are you talking about? But you meant in this series, so that's okay.
Right. Yeah.
But I was like, Tim, what do you mean we've never seen that?
Why has no one ever thought of this before? This is such a good idea.
Oh dear. Yeah. So I think that's it. I think we covered all the main. But any other moments or scenes you wanted to bring up?
Again, I just want to talk a little bit about the flashback scenes.
I'll go on, yeah.
I do think they fit this movie well, but I don't really like what it does for the overall series because they're bringing this light to Charles Lee Ray that I never felt before. Like, I always, got the idea that he was this crazy, killer, but now they're adding this weird, like, oh, he was like obsessed with this, one woman kind of thing. And it's weird that if he was really that obsessed with her, especially like literally to the point where it's like, in the first movie, his interaction with her is like minutes before the first movie actually starts. And yet this is like the first time we're hearing about it. This is the first time he wants to get revenge.
That is fair. I think I'll counteract some of what you just said, but I will agree that it is kind of weird that we've never heard about it. It reeks of, we had this idea for this movie, but we never thought about this before. There was never a seed or anything like that was planted that led to this
seed.
Oh, there you go. Very good. What I will
but
maybe...
it's also, sorry, just one last quick point, and then it feels weird with, again, we're all in continuity, so we know that he does have this woman that, I mean, I guess in Bride we see that maybe she was a little more into him than he was her, but still he kind of had the point that, like, oh, Tiffany was his girl.
The point I was going to make there, to play devil's advocate for your problem that he's getting an obsession with this woman, I don't think... They say obsessed, but the way I actually read it was that this was just another one of his victims. And this is kind of what he does when he's going to kill someone. He invades their life, he ruins their life, he threatens their children. He I was sort of taking this is him being like he's not job serial killer. This is what he does. This was his MO. Because it didn't feel like, oh, this was going to be a long-term thing. It felt like, when he had her on that sort of table and there was like a voodoo mask behind him and he was doing whatever, I don't think he was necessarily planning on keeping her alive that much longer. Okay. Or the kid, for that matter. Like, I feel like this was going down a path, and maybe that would explain why it's not been mentioned in 25 years, because it wasn't actually that important to him in that sense. It's just that, it was his next kill, but she set him up to got him put away. I don't know.
Now that he's at this point where he's
not trying to become human again, so he's
tying up loose ends. Okay, I can deal with that. How did you feel about like the direction style of the flashbacks with it was like black and white, but with like little bits of color?
Little bits of color were cool. They felt kind of rough to me though, in the sense that if I think the black and white was more to actually try and hide his age, which was just not working, because he looked so different. Like I say, he looks more like Tommy Wiseau now than he does what he did back in the first movie.
I feel like it was a little too over stylized for like it looks cool, but I don't know if it's necessary in this movie where we don't really have much style, Yeah,
well, we have style, but we don't have this. Like the style of these flashbacks didn't fit with not even just this movie, just this series in general. We've never had this. We've never had these black and white flashbacks before. I don't think so. I don't remember any.
I don't. Not that I remember, no.
So they felt like this little cheap way of like retconning this stuff back into it. And I'm okay with these ideas. Like I say, maybe they should have done what I thought was going to happen. They were going to reveal that was his daughter. And that's why he showed up after all this time. He found out that some woman that he'd, either had a relationship with or maybe he'd raped her or something, just to go dark with it because he's that type of character. And he found out that she existed, and that's why he's shown up after all this time, because he found out.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where, again, when I looking back a couple of years ago when I first watched it, I remember really, really liking it, and then watching it now, I'm noticing these little things where I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I didn't think about this that much the first time around, but that's kind of weird and maybe unnecessary.
I think there's a few things continuity-wise that are a little bit fluid. You just kind of have to accept they're going to wave, they're going to waver slightly one way or the other a little bit, depending on the movie, because that's what the movie needs them to be.
They're very tiny nitpicks, though, and I think the good definitely outweighs the bad on that.
Yeah. So, basically it's a pretty decent sequel. It's not the best of the series, but it's enjoyable enough. If you like Chucky,
Yeah.
I think you'll have some fun out of it. It's definitely
And,
not. It's definitely better than the worst 2 movies in the franchise. So
without a doubt. And I'll say I'm actually I'll say really excited for the new one. Because if it's just like, hopefully like this, but maybe a little better, it'll be nice to have hopefully one at least good franchise movie this October.
what are you talking about? You know fine well that Leatherface and Jigsaw are going to be classics.
Of course, yeah. I can't wait for those. Awesome.
Oh right, let's rate this movie. So Tim, what would you give Curse of Chucky out of 10?
I think I'm gonna give it a kind of floating for a 6 or a 6.5, but I think I'll give it a 6.5.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in that range as well. 6.5.
Yeah. Watch out, the ratings, please. Gotta come get you.
Yeah, they're coming for us apparently. I will. I think I'm just going to settle on a 6, and it's an enjoyable 6. It's like nothing special, doesn't do anything amazing, but it's solid enough. It's enjoyable. But it's kind of it falls into that sort of category of where I think of all those sequels we got in the 80s of a lot of horror movies where, oh yeah, this isn't a great movie, but I still kind of like it just for what it is, and it's fine. And it kind of falls into that for me. And honestly, I don't get a lot of those horror sequels anymore these days, so I appreciate having this, actually. It's kind of a weird... Yeah, I enjoy having this kind of decent sequel that I don't usually get anymore.
Yeah, they tend to usually go like one way or the other, where it's just horrendous or, really good. So, it's nice to have like, oh, cool, like a middle one that's... I'm glad this exists. It's not my favorite, but certainly enjoyable, and I'm glad it's here in the franchise.
Exactly. So... No, and I think it plays into the series being very consistent again, outside of the one big dip from the last movie. This is much closer to the other good ones. Not as good, but certainly it's not a million miles away from it. So so that's Curse of Chucky. I do want to actually briefly mention though. I think one of the last episodes I mentioned that I was going to go back and get all our ratings so that I could give you statistics at the end of the year and. Each year, maybe every time we do the best of the year video, we can have a look at what we rated that year, and I can tell you what Tim's average was, what my average was, and that kind of thing. Yeah. So I was going back, and I started from the start. Honestly, my main thought, I'm not surprised at our scores from those early reviews. I am just, and maybe surprised isn't even the right word, but we were terrible. Like, seriously, those early episodes are absolutely awful. I do not recommend anyone go back. So much so that I actually said to Tim, Tim, some of those bigger movies we did in those first like 20, 30 episodes, we're probably going to do those again at some point. Just so those are good. I mean, it depends. If you better versions of them. I mean, your opinion may not be that we're that good now. That's fair. But we're definitely better than we were back in those days. Yeah. I tell you that. Some of them were making me cringe. Like, even you and me, like our like we just weren't, I don't know, confident, I guess, or comfortable. I'll say comfortable. We weren't as comfortable yet to just. It
was a new thing, for better or worse. We're in, I guess, somewhat of a groove. But,
yeah. What a groove it is. So that was cracking me up. In fact, the first episode has some horrible background noise. I don't think it was coming from us. It was one because we used to have another couple of people who shall name nameless, but one of them I think had like a fan on or something, and it was like just so terrible.
I also feel like earlier on, like some people might say I am still maybe too forgiving with the ratings, but I think especially early on, there was a lot of stuff that I might have given higher than it should have been, because I feel like now I do try to be a little harsher, like when necessary, but
unless we're reviewing The Boy for some reason, in which case you're just throwing
fantastic.
You give that an 8, by the way, just to remind everyone at home. Tim rated The Boy an 8 out of 10. Just
I know, I apologize. It probably should be higher, but we'll see when we revisit it.
Your credibility is shot to shit because of that. The amount of classics you've rated that equal to is insane. Absolutely insane, Tim. I won't stand for it. Anyway, that brings an end to the Screams After Midnight. I should tell you about October, which is coming up, because we are going to be doing some special stuff. We are going to be doing a lot more extra reviews over the month. We call it the October-thon, and because of that, we do at least 4 episodes a week, maybe more. We've got 4 a week scheduled. We might end up doing some extras, because we'll just say, hey Tim, do you want to watch X movie? And we'll be like, yeah, let's do X movie.
But I highly recommend, you know, even if we don't get to 4 more, if you follow us on social media, we'll probably still be talking about horror movies all month long. And even if we don't get to doing a review for one, you know, you can probably see us post about it on Twitter or something. So.
In fact, if people would like, I have now we admittedly don't have as much time to watch movies outside of the show anyway, so chances are our list would be almost identical, give or take. Maybe Tim would have a few more. But I do actually have like a point system for Octoberthon if people would like to play along at home and try and watch as many horror movies as they want. Simple point system. You get more points for new watches that you've not seen before. Obviously, you're just scoring it yourself. You have to either be honest with yourself, or what's the point of playing? Like the whole point is to try and watch more movies. That only benefits you. There's no prize. But if you want that available, it's just an Excel spreadsheet. I can make the link available at the start of October. But let me know. So we're doing that. A lot of extra episodes. We're taking the first week in November off because we're doing so much during October. On top of that, there are 2 Patreon votes for next month. One is Classics, the other one is Knee High Mischief. I've explained those in every episode so far, so I'll just brush past it. But yeah, that's the 2 Patreon votes. The $5 tier and up can vote on those. There's also a free vote, though, a public vote. The link for that's in the description below. That is a werewolf movie vote, so everyone gets to vote on that, so check that out. On top of that, there's something else that'll be a surprise next month. Something else we're going to be doing, not specific to streams. I mentioned this in the last video, but we've got an extra thing which is going to Patreon, but the first one will be free for everyone to try next month. So you can look forward to that.
Yeah, that should be good. And then also, I probably won't be on them, but there are some horror TV shows starting up that you'll be reviewing, so people can get their fix on those. There
are, yeah. Exorcist Season 2 is starting up next week, and
Channel Zero
just started. We've already done the first episode of that. You can check that review out if you want to. It was good. I liked it.
Nice. I haven't watched it yet, but I love the first season. Actually, I'll probably be watching the episode tonight, so excited.
Cool. So you can do that. And it's not horror, but Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams also is a thing. That's a sci-fi anthology show. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of stuff happening. But so by all means, check stuff out. Look forward to stuff in October. We're going to make a big month of it. So thank you very much for watching or listening. Let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. As we said, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV if you want to support the channel and support the show and what we do here. But otherwise, that's so thank you once again for watching. Keep watching scary movies, and we'll see you next time.